All right, John, we are talking about, we talked about events. We talked about Tri-Cities having the Water Follies event. We talked about the Tri-Cities having the Ben Franklin County Fair. But there was another event in town this week that was very real estate focused, and I was super excited to see it here in Tri-Cities. And that is a gentleman by the name of Alex Cook put on what was the first annual Eastern Washington Real Estate Summit. And so listed in their book, they build this, and you might have seen their advertisements on Instagram and TikTok. They did a good job promoting the event. Talking about mindset, strategy, wealth, and legacy creation through using real estate. So, I think, a lot of us in the industry and business, we've been to a lot of conferences like education. I'm just a huge factor in lifelong learning. Like, I don't think it stops once you finish. Sorry, bad news for you college students out there. But like once you finish college and that, like the world's constantly changing, right?
Yes.
Like what if I, never upgraded and started, using AI in the real estate business? What if I never started doing 3D tours with, with cameras and Matterport tours? Like if you're not constantly learning and seeing what's out there, I do subscribe to the theory that on a lot of things you're going to get left behind. And real estate and investing is definitely one of those things. So what Alex wanted to do was really bring kind of a very, first class type of real estate investing event to Tri-Cities. And as we talk about it a little bit today, I mean, I'm going to give you my hot take on it and what I thought of it. And so I'm going to say some critical things, but please don't soundbite those. and know that my overall impression that I just start with is this was a really, really good event for Tri-Cities. Like the speakers were fantastic. There were some good things that were said. But as I was sitting there, I thought, okay, I'm going to have to talk about this on the radio show because there's some things when people go to an event like this that there's some dangers that people can have at an event like this that they need to consider. So I think one of those dangers is that you can't forget about the steps that got those speakers where they were on stage, because there was a lot of, and they have to pick their battles with what they're going to speak about, right? Because they want to be an engaging speaker. No one wants to go see a boring speaker.
Yeah.
Like that's not going to get you excited and just wrought up about investing in real estate. But at the same time, at some point, you have to know what the boring things were that got all of those speakers onto stage, and they were all excellent and super qualified. But there were some boring things that they had to do to get to that point. A couple of the speakers did actually mention that when they were talking, but some of it got kind of glossed over. So first thing that I want to talk about is the very first speaker that they had was Adam Diaz from Advisory Rooms, Lexar Homes. And he has a background in finance and accounting. And so, he spent even a decade as a professor in economics and accounting. So, I mean, this guy knows what he's talking about. It got me really fired up as an agent being there and seeing, and mind you, they had 400 people show up for this event. If you've ever ran events, it's difficult to get 400 people to show up, have it be well run, and then keep people's attention for an entire afternoon. They nailed it. So what I loved about Adam's speech is he went through and he gave basically, I think there were 7 points. There's really only 5 I care about. But he gave 5 points that I think sometimes I forget to talk about on the show that really lead to the benefits of investing in real estate. And I loved hearing from a numbers accounting guy. Like, this guy doesn't mess around, right? Like, if it doesn't work and the numbers don't work, he's out. And that's what I loved about his speech, because I think sometimes people get too excited and they ignore the numbers. In fact, there was even a question from the crowd that said, hey, I'm working with a client that's been denied, 7 times for financing. What do you think, what would you tell me to keep them motivated and keep them going? And a couple of the speakers on stage said, something's wrong with the numbers. Like you're ignoring something in the presentation that you're not seeing with the banks. And Adam really talked about that. But one of the points he talked about that's so great, and a bunch of the speakers said this, is appreciation. Right? Is if you're not in the game, they always say, when's the best time to buy real estate? That's a question people daily I hear in my office. Mm-hmm. When's the best time to buy real estate? And I love the saying they gave facetiously on stage is 10 years ago. Okay, because if you go back and look, and we look at prices in Tri-Cities, all of us listening to this show, we all wish we would have bought more property. If we would go back 10 years ago, the best time to buy, I would have bought, knowing what we know, I would have bought 10 more houses, knowing what the COVID appreciation would have been that we got. And, and I would have been more aggressive. I think every single person in the room says that. So then they say, well, when's the second best time to buy real estate? And the answer is today. Okay, if that was 10 years ago, then the answer is today in that situation. And because you're not going to get the appreciation benefit if you don't have it, okay? And so you've got to look at that. And I love that the theme about this summit was not get rich quick. It was a lot of buy and hold. There was a little bit of talk about some of the speakers do some flipping and stuff, but their main wealth creation is buy and hold. And so unless you own that property and can hold it, you won't get the appreciation. Second point he made was the opposite of appreciation, saying that there are massive tax benefits, and I'm not allowed to say what they are on this show because I'm not a licensed CPA. Mm-hmm. But in the realm of depreciation, as an asset, as an investment, you're going to get some significant tax benefits from owning and holding real estate over time. One of the things you hear about in real estate investing when you get into it, and I've studied a lot of different methodologies about this everywhere, everybody from Warren Buffett to Dave Ramsey to all kinds of different real estate investors. And you start to hear the word about leverage, right? And that's where like Dave Ramsey pulls out like a wet noodle and whips you until never use leverage. But a lot of real estate investing is based upon leverage. And what that is basically borrowing money. I mean, if we, in its simplest forms, is borrowing money to buy an asset that you normally could not buy, which at the end of the day, if things go correctly, that will multiply your returns, right? Because you only put in 100,000, but you buy a $400,000 house that's appreciating at 10%, then that 100,000 you put in is getting the benefit of all of that 10% appreciation on 400, not on just if you owned a piece that was 100. So, however, it can go the opposite way. And when it goes the opposite way with leverage, it can be trouble faster. So one of the things that one of the speakers said, it was actually Adam Diaz on stage, and I love his finance and economics background. And he said on stage, leverage without liquidity is stupidity. Ooh. And I was like, dude, this is awesome. Like this guy. And so liquidity in our world, what that means is that you have to have a certain amount of free cash flow, liquidity, cash that you have available to make payments. So if you have a property where a tenant leaves, or you have a property that gets destroyed by wind, earth, fire, whatever, you have to have a certain amount of liquidity to handle what's going to be thrown at you, so that you can still cover those leverage payments when there is trouble. Because what happened was another speaker at the event, everybody, it was, and you hear this in real estate investing as well, said cash is trash. That's not exactly what he meant, because if people soundbite that, that's why I'm saying, please don't soundbite my show and tell the organizers I didn't like it, because I loved it. But if you put those two together, cash is trash. And then you have Adam saying like leverage without liquidity is stupidity. Both of these gentlemen are super smart people, but they were talking in different realms. So the cash is trash part of the talk, what came with invest your money. If it's just sitting around, not invested, it's not being used to where you can get returns. Yeah. That's what he means by that. However, that gentleman, and I know him, would never go to the point to where there's no liquidity. Back to what Adam was saying. The problem that you run into, though, is if people soundbite their events or they're, have ADD and missed part of the frickin', got up to go to the bathroom and missed the part about leverage without liquidity is stupidity. You might just hear cash is trash and spend all your cash. Terrible idea. Okay, so you have to, there's a balance there. And that's what, I always warn people about with seminars about this, is that there is a balance there for sure. But one of the investors said, one of his things was buy and then never transact. And what he means by that is buy and hold. And that's where I go back to the point about a lot of what these very successful guys have done is very, very boring. They bought a house that cash flowed at $200 a month, which you're not going to get rich on. You can probably only buy a couple lattes. But while you were cash flowing at $200 a month, you had a house that originally, 20 years ago cost $120,000, and someone else was paying that debt off every single month. And at the same time, the value of that house was moving upwards to where now that's a, $380,000 house, zero mortgage on it. And I've helped an investor just liquidate a portfolio very similar to this that did this exact same thing. So I've seen it from beginning to end. And once in that lifetime of that house, probably the AC went out too. So they had to put in an $8,000 AC system. Well, that eats up quite a bit of $200 a month of cash flow. Yeah. I can tell you that. To the point where if you look at only the lifespan of that, it was boring. Super boring and not exciting. It looked like this person was making little to no money every single month. But what I loved about what the finance accounting guy said is just by itself, if you're only looking at cash flow, it doesn't work. Real estate doesn't look like a good investment. But if you take cash flow and then you add appreciation, then you add depreciation with the taxes, you add leverage to it. Now you stack all 5 of these factors, and there's actually 2 more. One of them was death, which was great because then death is not great. But in this instance, it was great because there is a way that you will also, a taxable event will happen upon death. That is a big advantage in real estate. It's called step up. And I'm not allowed to explain it because I'm not a CPA. So you have to talk to your tax CPA about that. But when you add all 7 of those items together, boring all of the sudden looks pretty fun. And you get the benefit of where real estate starts to shine. And when you look at, is it boring that at the end of that 18 to 20 year cycle, is it boring that you have 2 houses that are each worth $400,000? So you're sitting on free and clear owned real estate of $800,000. And that was only if you did it twice. Wow. If I just showed you how to do it twice and be boring for 20 years, and have a few times where you cuss and swear about it when the HVAC goes out or you put on, a new roof, and you do that for 20 years. At the end of it, I told you had all of the tax advantages and free and clear real estate of $800,000. That's what people see. Yeah. And I just want to make sure they don't miss the section that is really boring. And I will say, these guys did a really, really good job of doing that. Another great speaker, Vicky Montagudo, owner of C21, another real estate company in town. She got up and spoke a lot about what it takes to get deals done. And she did speak to how difficult it can be to get something approved, permitted, and through, and how layers and layers of those regulations dramatically increase the price of housing. And so she's a really good advocate for making sure that we have a good balance of not too many regulations. You know, of obviously we have to have some for health and safety, but not over regulating this industry, so that we get an actual supply of homes that we can affordably sell to these investors, first-time home buyers, people downsizing. It affects the price greatly. So I absolutely loved what she said about that. She also said that I am not going to be replaced by AI. So I appreciate her talking directly to me. And she's like, as an agent, if you maintain human connectivity, portions of our job are already replaced by AI. I'm using it daily to get rid of portions of our job already. It's made me a better agent over the last 6 months. However, it's not going to replace the human connectivity portion, the judgment calls, and the local knowledge that I know about the community. So for real estate agents, definitely, I would say find an agent that's using AI. But at the same time, there's some double and triple checking that you need to do with a human being that makes the difference in one of the largest financial purchases you will make. So overall hot take on it. I tell you what, I'm super thankful for these guys that put this on. I love having an event like this that you don't have to spend $4,000 on to go to Vegas or go to Chicago, you know, or go to Phoenix, that you can go here, get a taste of what it's like. And then if you have more questions about that or what event you should go to next, I've been to a lot of these. I would love to help out with that. Congrats to everybody that participated and put this on. Love having this in the Tri-Cities and look forward to helping people on this journey, whether it's buying that property, managing that property for them, analyzing what their rents could be. Any questions like that, go to kenmoreteam.com, shoot us a message, and we'll be doing this again right here next week.